This is the Benny, Danny, and Manny show. Because I heard from a friend, Zoe Stewart, that your actual name is Benny, not Benjamin.
You're right.
That's interesting. Do you like that?
You know, it's a little thing, okay? It's not a big deal. I don't like it. My full name is Jack Benny Patterson.
Jack Benny Patterson.
So it's not like, Jack Benjamin or whatever. And my folks named me after, actually there was a nephew they liked named Benny, another nephew they liked named JB. And then my dad's first name was Jack, and they called me Jack for about a week. Then I got Benny, and Benny was cool until I was 18, 19, and it started to sound like a bookie or a character in a Damon Runyon, musical, Benny the Bookie or something. But anyway, people started calling me Ben around, I was 22, 23, something like that. And you can always tell when someone met me if they still call me Benny. If they've known me a long time. And so I'm not really upset about it. It's just I like Ben better, but if you want to rib me, you can call me Benny.
What do you find to be the most rewarding aspect of being the campus pastor?
Well, I really like you guys. You're really fun to be with. Honestly, the best part is proclaiming the Word of God and being able to tell people about the Lord. That is the joy. But you're all. I think part of it, you're all about the ages of my own kids. My kids are from 18 to 26, and it sounds a little cheesy, I guess, but I just like you guys. You're fun to be with, and I really look forward to coming to college. And I feel kind of like Papa. A lot of times, honestly, there are times when I'm walking across campus and I'll see some of you sitting someplace, and I have to restrain the impulse to kind of walk by and pat you, so it's kind of paternal, I guess, but it is the best part of the job.
Well, if you ever see us, you can definitely pat us.
I can pat you. Okay, I will.
When did you first come to know the Lord, and what was that experience like?
I think I was 9 years old, and it was a child evangelism class called the Good News Club. Mrs. Dalton opened her home to kids and gave us popsicles if we came to the Bible study. So, I've told the story in chapel, but I had some kind of knowledge of God. For some reason, my folks didn't take me to church at that time in my life, but somehow I knew there was a hell, and I was kind of worried about it. Like if I died, I might go there. And God, how long can my list of sins be at 9? But somehow I had this sense that I might be in big trouble if I died. But when I heard the real simple this presentation of the gospel. That's when it really was real to me. And when I remember praying and asking Jesus to come into my heart, it wasn't mystical but something, I knew something changed, that I was different, and that's how it started.
When did you feel called to be a pastor?
I was on my 5th or 6th major in college. I was pre-med. I wanted to be a football coach for a while, pre-law. I thought I might want to be a psychologist. I just was, I wasn't so much confused. I just was interested in a lot of things. And but two things happened my 3rd year of college. One, I met a pastor for the first time in my life that I thought maybe, I wouldn't mind being like him. Like all the pastors I'd had before, I respected them, but I couldn't identify with them. So therefore, I couldn't think of myself as being a pastor. Secondly, all I knew about pastors, I just figured that all they did was preach sermons, and I didn't know what they did the rest of the week, but I didn't know if I could ever do that. And my 3rd year of college, I had a speech class, and I did really well in it. And between having met a pastor that I liked and could identify with, and thinking, hey, maybe I could do this, it opened a door crack for me. But at that point, if I was, depending on my major at the time, if I was going to be a doctor or a football coach or a whatever, I was real serious about being a Christian in those things. But I remember driving home from school one day, and I can remember the spot on the road. I can remember what I was wearing. It's so vivid to me. And I heard God speak to me, and he was calling me to be a pastor. And it was it wasn't an audible voice, but it couldn't have been more compelling or clear to me. And so I was, maybe I was 19, 20 years old. I was kind of young. I was 17 when I started college, and so I think I was probably around 20 when that came clear to me.
I have a book called The Best Christian Writing, 2000, and our very own Benny is in here with a work called Holy War. I'm just going to read a quote. You talk about wrestling with God in our prayers and being brutally honest with Him. I'm going to read a quote from page 189. I read somewhere that the ability of a couple to express anger well can do wonders for their sex life. It's true. It's true. It seems there can be no warm fuzzies without their opposite. Cold pricklies? Both anger and tenderness are forms of passion, as is prayer. God doesn't mind our anger. He even relishes it, if it drives us to Him instead of away from Him. Better an outburst than a theologically correct and spiritually pallid rationale and a dangling conversation. No wonder we can get so bored with prayer. God is bored too. He wants to engage our hearts, not just our brains.
Did I write that?
I believe you did.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I guess my question is, do you really think God is eager to hear us angry with Him?
Well, I think God is eager to engage us, to have us know Him and be in a relationship with Him. So that it's like in this way, it's like any human being. If I want to be if I'm eager to be with my wife, I better be wanting also to let that include her anger, her downs as well as her ups, and maybe the downsides aren't as comfortable. But I'm speaking as a human. I don't think God's uncomfortable with our downsides. It's like I remember one of my children, I can't remember which one, when they were little, I made them really mad, and they were yelling at me, saying, I was the worst daddy in the world. And it didn't bother me too much because their world's real small, and I mean, so how bad could I be? But God doesn't sweat the small stuff. I mean, God is so big. I know He loves me, and so while my wife's anger might make me uneasy or threatened, I don't think my anger makes God threatened or uneasy. What matters to Him is that I be in relationship with Him. So it includes the whole everything. Read the Psalms. It's all in there.
So when we have something in our life that either goes wrong or just doesn't go our way, the way we feel we want it, do you think it's better or healthier for us to wrestle with God about it, or to just humbly accept it, or is there some mix that's healthier?
Go down swinging. I mean, there comes a time when you finally have to be resigned, maybe. But I don't know. I've studied the book of Job so many times, and he just doesn't stop, and until God speaks to him. And what's got Job so riled up is that he's afraid he's lost God, and God has been silent. And so he wants God to speak. He wants God to deal. And so when God does speak, Job finally does shut up and say, I cover my mouth up. I have been saying things I didn't know anything about. But I would rather see people hang in with God, even if it's angry. Now, the worst kind of anger toward God is not shouting at Him or whatever, but it's just going cold and shutting up. But I'd rather see people be angry and talk to God than to just get quiet about it. And I'm sure God would rather have that. But there may come a time. I'm thinking now, maybe you find out you have a terminal illness, and you fight and you pray, and God, for whatever reasons, chooses not to bring healing. And so then there may come a time when you lovingly, relax and sort of cast yourself into His arms, given, maybe a big disappointment. And and I've had both kinds of things. I've had where I've just hung in there and fought God. And that chapter in that book is about one of those situations with one of my kids, health issue. But there's other times where there's become a real sweet peace when I finally did stop fighting. But I don't think we should ever bypass the fighting part. I think it's staying with God. It's praying.
Another quote from page 193. Benny writes, "Earlier in my Christian experience, I was afraid to name something as the voice of God for fear I might be wrong and look dumb. Then it occurred to me that I was probably missing a lot because of my fear of how I might look. Which was worse, to always look cool and rational but risk missing the voice of God? Or to risk looking a little credulous and crazy once in a while but hear God at least more often than I had been? I've opted for the latter. Call it prayer and schizophrenia, if you will, but I think trying to look cool was something we were supposed to have given up in junior high." I thought that was very well put.
Thank you.
How would you encourage students and faculty to listen to God's voice?
Well, there's no formula, but I can say something right away that I think will pretty well ensure you won't hear God's voice, and that's if you never stop and be quiet, and if you stay constantly moving and busy, and which I think is kind of the virus that sort of is always latent here at Westmont College, is just too much activity, too much noise. Maybe it's just Southern California, maybe it's just North America and this time in life. But whatever, I can be sure God can do whatever he wants to. And if he wants to interrupt you, and he will do that, he can interrupt you even in your busyness. But I think one way to listen to God is just to listen, just to be quiet. But beyond that, I think the ancient practices and disciplines of reading Scripture quietly and thinking of it and being silent and journaling your thoughts and feelings and putting questions before God and stuff like that, I think are very important. It's interesting. I'm a pretty prayerful man, I guess. There's always more I could be in this, but I spend a good amount of time daily in prayer and in quiet, and I don't think God has ever spoken to me when I asked him something. Like at that moment where I say, "Lord, what about this?" Or he just doesn't do it with me. Now, some people think he does, but I just don't get it. But when he does speak, it's always maybe a day later or a week later, and I'm doing something else, and it's like having asked him the question and listening. It's for some reason God kind of comes at me elliptically or out of my peripheral vision. He sort of comes in there and will speak to me when he does. But I know other people who pray and listen, and I really think that they hear the Lord on things. I've had people say things to me that came to them in prayer that were so right on, so pointed, that things they couldn't have understood or known about me, down to even phrases and language, that I know God does speak that way. I really believe that.
What was the lowest point of your life, and how did God lift you up out of it?
Mm-hmm. The lowest point in my life was maybe 2 or 3 there, but I think the lowest time was when I herniated 2 discs in my lower back and was forced to have total bed rest for 6 weeks, and was in great pain and didn't know how it was going to turn out, and was depressed and in pain. That was the hardest and the most life-changing. Because without of that, I got, all I could do was pray for those 6 weeks. I couldn't do anything else. And as I was about to return to health and getting ready to go back to work, I remember saying to the Lord one day, I said, this pray, it's been wonderful to pray so much. And it's too bad I won't have time to do this when I go back to work. And the Lord spoke to me again very clearly. He said, "Stupid." He did. It was a nice tone of voice, but he said, "Stupid. You have the same 24 hours when you're well as when you're sick, but the trouble with you, Ben, is when you're well, you think you're in charge, and when you're sick, you know you're not." And that changed my life. But it was the hardest 6 weeks I'd ever gone through.
Okay, now it's time for the lightning round.
What book are you reading right now?
Band of Brothers, Stephen Ambrose. It's a history of the 101st Airborne, easy company. Spielberg and Hanks made a 10-part miniseries for HBO out of it. True story. It's about World War II. It's a great book.
What is the last good movie you've seen?
The last good movie. Oh, the Two Towers, not the Twin Towers, but the Two Towers.
Two Towers.
Yeah.
That was a good movie. Do you have a favorite science?
Favorite science?
Yeah.
Oh, biology.
Biology.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What CDs are in your CD player?
Well, we've got Who's Next by The Who.
Excellent.
I got 2 or 3 U2 albums. Paul Simon's Greatest Hits.
Your favorite book of the Bible?
2 Corinthians.
Why is that?
And the Psalms. Well, I like 2 Corinthians because Paul is so vulnerable and transparent in that. Really, the guy gets criticized for everything. I mean, people tell him he's a bad preacher, and here he's an apostle, to boot. And it's just, I just love Paul, and I love the Psalms because of they're all prayers.
What is your favorite Bible verse?
And we who with unveiled faces all reflect the Lord's glory are being transformed into his likeness with ever-increasing glory, which is from the Lord, who is the Spirit. It's 2 Corinthians 3:18. But that's what I think the whole Christian life's about, is standing in the presence of God and reflecting and being transformed by his glory.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Pecan praline.
What is your favorite weekend activity?
Oh my. There's so many. Making waffles on Saturday morning.
That sounds good.
And
Great.
taking a walk with my wife down at the beach. Yeah, I see I'm 60, so I'm, so these are kind of sedentary joys, a walk and waffles.
Sounds great. Sounds really nice. Yeah. Favorite childhood memory?
The day my parents showed up at school and took me out of class and took me to Knott's Berry Farm.
Oh, wow.
That was so cool. I did that with my kids, only we took them to Disneyland. But, they went to school, and my parents said to me, and I was in class about an hour or so, or I don't know, but there was a note, and the teacher says, Benny, your parents want to see you. I was kind of worried. I went out there, and they swept me into the car and took me to Knott's Berry Farm, which was as close to Disneyland as you got back when I was that age. But that was my favorite memory.
And just for no reason, they just
did it, just 'cause.
Wow.
And I did it with my kids.
What is your most embarrassing moment?
Oh, well, it's when I was 20, and I was dating a girl, and I thought this was progressing nicely, and we were on summer staff at Forest Home Christian Conference Center, and I walked her back to her cabin, and I went to kiss her goodnight, and there's something about puckered lips moving through that no man's land, and she kind of moved her head, and I thought she didn't know what I was trying to do. So I repuckered and went for another one, and she ducked.
Oh, no.
And I realized she didn't want to be kissed, and that was pretty bad. I mean, that's pretty bad. But the worst part is that when I turned to walk away, I walked right into a tree, and and then I tried to say something funny, and it was stupid. And my ears are getting hot right now.
Oh, man.
Just still.
Wow.
That's great.
You know what? There's a denouement. I got a letter from her a couple years ago. I mean, she's like a grandma now. And she wrote me and apologized for not for refusing to kiss me, but she knew how embarrassed I was. And out of the blue sky, I think she saw an article I'd written, and she said, I think she apparently felt bad about that for 30 years. I don't know. So she wrote me a letter and apologized.
Wow.
So hang on, guys. Yeah.
When did you, or how did you meet your wife?
I met her at Forest Home in the summer staff. She wasn't the one who ducked my kiss.
That's good.
But she's the best. The best thing I ever did, you guys, really was, other than become a Christian, was to marry her and have my kids. She's the greatest example of God's grace in my life that I know of.
How did you know that you were supposed to marry her, or was it nothing like that?
No, it was total passion. I just, on our second date, we were driving back from having pizza together, back up to the camp we're working at, and I just looked at her and I thought, I could live with her the rest of my life. and it was really a peaceful feeling. I thought, it may not work out, but I think I finally met. I know the kind of person I need to be with. I knew that it could be her, and if not her, it would have to be someone like her. And I said that, I thought that without any anxiety, and it was our second date.
Wow. And then, how soon did you get engaged?
That date was in July. We got engaged in November.
Oh. Excellent.
Married in March 27th. We got married 9 months to the day we met, and I met her the night my dad died.
Oh, wow.
So it was a huge time. My dad, I met her June 27th, and he died that night.
I've heard that you like The Big Lebowski and Zoolander.
Mm-hmm.
I heard those are. I first heard The Big Lebowski was your favorite movie, but then you saw Zoolander and that.
No, I like them a lot. I wouldn't say favorites, but they're among my favorites. But I really like both movies a lot. Lebowski is hard to explain to people because the F word is like a comma in it, and the language is so foul. But there's just something about the situations and the characters that just make me laugh. And maybe I'm depraved. I don't know. And in our family, we're divided exactly along gender lines. And in general, I don't know any women who can stand Lebowski. And if anyone likes it, it's always sounding as a male. But my sons and I love Lebowski, and my daughter and my wife. Well, my wife hates it. Mary, I think, probably puts up with it. But what they did, they took kind of a burnout, middle-aged hippie, played by Jeff Bridges, and the cast is great. I mean, Jeff Bridges and John Goodman and John Turturro and Steve Buscemi, and they take the plot structure of Philip Marlowe's detective novels. You guys probably haven't read any of these, but these are written in the 40s, 50s. And the plots are all kind of episodic sort of plots where this detective is in one situation after another. And but they take that, the movie has very little coherence. It's just a series of episodes that are loosely connected, but they drop this kind of pudgy old hippie into the situation, and he just blunders his way through everything. But I don't know, it's just, they say funny things.
And what are your thoughts on Zoolander? What do you like?
Well, it's just silly. It's it's just why do some things seem funnier than others? But when and at points, it is such a great satire of popular notions about beauty. And there's this one great scene where Zoolander and his rival, I forget his rival's name. Yeah, Hansel. Well, they're talking with the reporter, and she admits that she was fat in junior high, and they look at each other and go, "Ooh." Well, that's not. I mean, the reality is not a funny reality. I mean, the way we look at people who have perfect bodies and the devastating effects that has on women. I mean, that's an ugly thing, but in just one little deft stroke, which makes you laugh, they skewer that superficial attitude. These two superficial guys look at each other, but it just makes me laugh. A bunch of self-preoccupied people kind of blundering through, and
It's humorous.
Wake me up before you go. Orange mocha cappuccino, whatever that line is.